Only Srivatsan is there. Good evening, Srivatsan. Srivatsan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ah, yes.
Did you ask anything? Sorry, my.
No. I was just telling only you are there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm writing JE on the 26th. They released the admit card.
26th. Okay, fine.
26th evening shift. I'm writing, sir.
26th evening shift. Okay, that's good. Like so, you have almost like what
2
now?
weeks,
Today
sir.
is 2 weeks, right? So yeah, like that's what the as I already told. What is that? Your mock exams are the keys. Mock like not only writing the exam. After writing the exam, make sure that you analyze the paper where you went wrong. So that particular concept alone you study. So like there obviously there are certain topics that which will be very like that can be a strength, and certain topics will be weak at. So only when you write exams you will know what you don't know, at least, right? Where you lack. So all these things you'll be able to easily find out once you write the mock exam, and then those particular concepts alone you refresh, and then write the next exam again. You'll get some more topics. So like that, as many tests you do, all your weaknesses will be corrected. So obviously the number of correct answers in your exams will also go up, because you don't know, you know more now, right? So yes, that's the way to go about it. Not only do you, like, this is for any competitive exam for that matter. Mock tests, analysis mock test, that's the key.
Yes, sir. Sir, other than that, is there anything that I need to focus on before I start writing the mock test? And per day, 2 mock tests is enough, no, sir?
Yeah, per day. See, per day 2 mock tests. So even if it's a 3 hours
Plus
exam you complete, yeah, 2 hours for the per exam. You also you take 2 hours, so 4 hours will go in exam itself. And now you have to sit and write all the corrections, in the sense where and all you went wrong. Or if it's a nice platform where they itself analyze and give you, you just make a note of it and start preparing which concepts where you went wrong, more number of questions. Or say there can be other mistakes where you know how to do it, but you're not able to do the problem. That will eventually will come, because you know now you've seen that particular kind of problem there, and next time if it's going to come, definitely you're going to do it. So it's like that. And other type of mistakes you'll be doing is, say, simple mistakes like calculation mistakes there and there, putting the constant values wrong. So those kind of mistakes, okay, you really have to do something about it. So like the major mistakes you'll be doing is because you don't know the concept, or because you don't know how to apply it. That will eventually become more like, say, feasible once you write more tests. That's how it is. And obviously you have to make sure that after, say, 4 hours of test, another 4 hours should be spent on analysis and going through the topics which you went wrong. So it'll be around at least 8 to 9 hours of 9 hours per day, and it's worth it. Definitely your marks are going to go up for sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Varun has joined. So for everybody, the school is getting over late, is it?
Sir, our exams end at like 4:15, sir. So by the time we reach home, it will be 5, sir.
Correct. So can we shift the classes from 5:30 or 6 if everybody's okay? Will it be helpful for you?
Yes, sir. But we only have one exam left, sir. That's on 15.
Okay. After the exams get over, what time will it be over?
I don't think we'll have school till JE or something like that, sir.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Then we can have more number of classes also. We'll plan
Even if we
something.
have school, it will be in morning only, sir. Some 9 to 12.
Okay, okay. But I will have my own classes for my college. Mornings I'll be free. But mornings, what time you will go to this thing school? So 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
9 we should be there, sir. 9 classes start.
So if you can even have 1 hour class in the morning, 7 to 8, will that be okay? 7 to 8 in the morning, and then normal, say, 6 to 7:30 or 5:30 to 7 in the evening. So that will be around 2.5 hours per day. Shall we do it? Like, if I don't know how many of you are there here. Only 2 of you, I guess. So
So
yeah,
morning
3 of
7 to
you
8,
are
we
there.
have to go to school, no, sir. I don't think that's possible.
No, 9 o'clock only you have to reach. So okay, that will be a little difficult. Okay, we'll see.
Sir, already we have 6 to 7:30 maths class, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, that I forgot. Okay. Crazy. Fine. So for others, when is your dates? Like, did you get the admit cards?
For me, it's on 25th.
25th. Okay. And one more, what I saw. Harini, Sri Harini.
For me, it's on 24th.
24th. Okay, fine. So 15th, 16th, if we keep the target, it should be fine. You have 10 days. So just, do whatever you can, how much ever time you want. At least, like, I would say, other than sleeping, eating, if you just concentrate only for this 10 days, 10, 15, 12 days, it will be really worth it. You will at least, like, irrespective of whatever marks you will get, you will really be able to appreciate how much improvement you have shown for yourself. Like, that will be a good satisfaction. Right? Okay. Anyways, so I think we'll start. What is the time? Time is 7:10. Okay, 5:10. Good. We will start.
Sir, like getting a mark above 90 percentile, what is the amount of marks that we're supposed to get?
See, it's percentile, right? So you cannot
Uh-huh.
say like how much marks you have to get. So it will be based on what is the top ranked scorer, or how much he scored. For him, it will be 100 percentile. So based on his marks, it will be. So generally, it will be, say, I don't know. It's out of 360, right? Yeah, total
300, sir.
300
300.
now. Change 300. So generally, it will be around 290. Will be the first mark. So accordingly, the marks will change. Say if you want to get around 90 percentile, out of 300, even if you at least say cross 120, you should be fine.
Raghav sir told around 130 to 150, sir.
Yeah, that's what 120 is minimum. But again, that is not sufficient for you to get through any college. At least 98 percentile will be this thing. So see, I have seen so many students doing this mistake, in the sense that I know a student who got physics 99 percentile, math some 97 or 98 percentile, and chemistry 30%. Like again, I have the same opposite in chemistry also. 100 almost like 100%, 99.99 percentile in chemistry, and other two subjects were pretty bad. So see, the people who get to the top are actually giving equal importance to all the subjects. You might have your own favorite subject, that is entirely different. But because of that, you studying that only makes no sense. It's really not logical. All the things are required, right? So you have to spend each. So like if at all, maybe if you're strong in chemistry, for that you have to spend actually lesser amount of time, whichever subjects you're strong at, because that is anyways going to go to you. That is the thing which you don't know, right? Those kind of questions will be majority, because obviously not like any as long as you are not already cracking say 260s and 270s, we really have to accept the fact that we really don't know much. So obviously we have to expose ourselves, so that eventually, as the number of concepts and number of models of problems you expose yourself into, uh, obviously then the more and more tests after that, consecutively you're going to improve. That's how it's going to be. And now that you have 4 attempts, you can have actually do a brilliant effort if the second attempt or even third attempt, or the last would be the fourth attempt. Highly possible.
Last attempt, it's coinciding with the board exam times.
Then you plan it accordingly. That's it.
Sir, so I have to give the April attempt only, my literally best.
Yeah, but I would say assume that you don't have any attempts anymore. This is the last attempt, like that, to prepare for this, and eventually it is going to help. Like for the next attempts you're going to write. Always first time is always a charm. It always has a charm, right? So go for it. Like just prepare the best, whatever you can do in 10 days. You have enough these things. You have enough knowledge. It's just that you have to spend time, quality time in the right way, right? So that if you do, yes, lot of improvement you can show for yourself. Okay. So what I was telling, we were doing problems on coordination compounds, right? So we'll just do a couple of more problems and then we'll go to kinetics. Kinetics is very interesting chapter. I have I have it as a separate subject. Like yeah. Anyways, so okay. So this question is good. I have. COH2 6 times 2 plus. Okay, so these 4 complexes are given to you, and they're asking which has 0 CFSE. Right, which of the following complexes has 0 CFSE, crystal field stabilizing or splitting energy. I would prefer to call it as stabilizing energy. If you want to call it splitting, it's okay. So what is the trick? We'll quickly do it. So tell me, what is the trick? Which kind of species will have which kind of species will have 0 CFSE? What is the criteria? Without even counting, like you know how to count it. Okay, I know how to count it. But without even counting it, for sure I can say that okay, this compound or this complex will not have, will have 0 CFSE. What is the tool you can use? What is the tool? Okay, I would say the clue is there in the configuration, electronic configuration. What kind of configuration will fetch you C? MnH2O. Okay, I don't know. We'll check it. But what is the criteria? Okay. So the thing is, fine. We'll check. We'll check. You said C. We'll check how is it. Right. Fine. So Mn is gonna have 4s2, 3d5. Right now, if it is going to be CO, Mn 3 plus. This is a neutral ligand. So if it's 3 plus, so it is going to have 3d4 configuration. Correct. Okay. See, the thing is, you have to look for, this is not the answer. Right. How am I telling it? When you have either D0 or D10 configuration. Right. When you have D0 or D10 configuration, those kind of complexes are going to have 0 CFSE. If you calculate, you will put it. Obviously, no electrons in T2G. Hope you remember the formula for CFSE. 0.4. Correct. Yeah. So 0.4 into number of electrons in T2G, right? Plus that will be minus n before that, and plus 0.6 into no, it will be ulta. So CFSE, if I write the formula, it will be minus 0.6 into number of electrons in T2G plus 0.4 into number of electrons in EG. Yeah, this is the into delta naught. Right. So if you now put, you have D0 configuration, right? So obviously this will be 0, this will be 0, right? Now when you have
only for octahedral complexes, now, for tetrahedral it will be minus 0.4.
Exactly. Tetrahedral will be ulta. Exactly.
EG it comes below in the tetrahedral complex.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. That's right. What the numbers will be same. Only the plus and minus will be different.
Yes.
Correct. Right. 0.4 number of electrons into EG only. What?
Yes, sir. But sir, it will be minus 0.4 in EG plus 0.6 in 2J.
Yes. Correct. Yes, that's how it will be. Okay. So anyways, so when you have D0 or D10, if you calculate the CFSE value, it will turn out to be 0. If you want, you can calculate and check. It will be 0. Right. So only that you have to check. Okay. Fine. So it's CO. Okay. So CO3 plus and CO2 plus. Okay. So it will be scandium, vanadium, titanium, cobalt. Right. Fourth. So it will be 3d4 configuration. So 4s2, 3d4. Now if it's CO3 plus, it will become 3d3.
Sir, isn't it 3d7?
Scandium, vanadium, titanium, manganese, iron, cobalt. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it will become 3d6. No answers will match. What is wrong?
So the CFSE value isn't it
CFSE.
0.4 and T2G?
0.4 into T2G. Therefore, you're telling about this formula.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's what we changed. No, we asked you to change. So number of orbitals in T2G is 3, so that's why it's 0.6. Number of orbitals in EG is 2, that's why it's 0.4. That's how you remember. Or we
Okay,
changed it
sir.
to some. We asked you to change. Remember, like it was actually ulta what you said now, but I asked you to change it. This is how it is. Okay. Anyways, so we're checking for how it is. How is it? How is this? One second. Oh, okay. Actually, there is one more. D0, D5 directly you can tell it's going to have zero configuration. SEF is to be 0. There is one more D5 with a weak field ligand. Right, D5 with a weak field ligand will also have 0 CFSC. So we'll see how. Okay, this is the formula. Right. Say now, if I just check it, D5 in terms of T2G and EG, if I write, and with a weak field ligand, that means pairing will not happen, right? So it will be T2G3, EG2, right? Okay. Fine. So if I just put it the value, so it will be minus 0.6 into 3, 0.4 into 2. Actually, again, yeah, it should be ulta. Then it will be 0, correct. So it will be 1.8. This will be 0.8. No. So if I put it as 2 and 3, 0.2, 0.2, correct. I'm sorry. Actually, what you said was correct. It is number of electrons. This will be plus into EG number of electrons in T2G. This is a minus. Okay, this is correct. I'm sorry, guys. Please change it. I'm getting confused with this. Right. So remember it like the increase. There are 2 orbitals, so it should be really higher. So it should be 3 parts of that. So here it has 3 orbitals having 2 parts of this. So it's something like that. Now, if you do it, right, there are 2 electrons in EG, so plus 0.6, and the number of electrons in T2G is 3. So if you just calculate, it will be 1.2 minus 1.2. So it will become 0. But the same thing will not happen if it's going to be in a case of a strong field ligand, because pairing will happen. Definitely, you will get a non-zero value. Okay, fine. So again, so the answer is going to be whichever is going to have 3D5 configuration among this. That's going to be the answer, right? So Fe, if you calculate, so it is going to be 3D8, right? Manganese, iron, so 3D6. After manganese, it's iron, so 3D6. So it's 4s2, 3D6. So now it will become, if it's Fe3 plus, it will become 3D5. 4s0, 3D5. So answer is D. Okay, so just one more thing you learn. So other than D0 and D, which I already told you, when you have D5 complexes with weak field ligands, will also have 0 CFAC. It is, if you remember these kind of rules, you can save a lot of time actually without calculation. Okay, so this is the question. Okay, go to the next question. Option A, or I'll do this question first. For CO, Cl 6 times 4 minus, right? The CFSC value was 18,000 per centimeter. The per centimeter can also be unit for energy, right? If you can show you how it works, you have to go for dynes per centimeter, different units which you don't know. But anyways, this is the energy. Okay. Then they're asking if I have COCl4 2 minus, what will be its CFS? Right, so COCl6 4 minus, I had the CFSC to be this much, they're asking if I have COCl4 2 minus, what will be its CFS? Yes, any answers? It's one direct thing I told you. So what is the thing? What are you seeing here? What is the connection between this complex and this complex?
Same ligand.
Same ligand. Okay.
Same
One is
So
octahedral, another is tetrahedral.
okay, that is the thing which I wanted. One is octahedral, another is tetrahedral. Same ligand, same central metal atom. Right. Okay. So like they're asking in terms of CFSC. What can you tell about what will you do? What can you tell about octahedral and tetrahedral complexes regarding the CFSCs? Or if I ask you to compare the CFSCs of tetrahedral and octahedral complexes.
4/9.
That's it. That's what you have to use here, right? So we know in tetrahedral complexes, the amount of splitting is less because the number of ligands are less, amount of repulsions are less, so the splitting is also less, right? So that's why we said delta T is 4/9 times of delta naught. This is an experimentally proven value. If I have same ligand, same metal central metal atom, one for tetrahedral, another for octahedral, this is how you compare the CFSC values of the tetrahedral and octahedral complexes, right? So this is an octahedral complex. They have given the value, right? So they're asking me for the tetrahedral complex, and you can directly find it out. That will be 4/9 into 18,000, which will be 2,000, which will be 8,000 per centimeter. Correct. Right? So again, easy this thing. I have seen questions coming like this. Okay, right, fine. Next question. I have again 4 complexes. So these four complexes are given to you, right? And I'm asking the wavelength of light absorbed, or where is it maximum? Like option A, B, C, D. Lambda light absorbed maximum is which one of these? Where the wavelength of light absorbed in all these 4 options is maximum. Which one is going to have maximum wavelength? That's the question. Think about it. Any reason can you, or any approach can you come up with? What are they asking here? What are they trying to ask?
Sir, does it have something to do with the strength of the ligands?
Yes, it has something to do with the strength of the ligands, correct? That is one point. Okay, what exactly are they asking about? Wavelength is a thing which we didn't study about, which we didn't even see. But how can you relate it to something which you already studied from whatever I taught you?
More excitation, more light absorbed.
More excitation. More excitation. I can visualize it in two ways. More excitation. Say more number of electrons are going, or there is another way of seeing it. That's the correct way.
So does it have anything to do with the density of the ligand?
Yes, but see, all the things which you're telling is correct. Okay, fine. Density, the strength of the ligand, all those things definitely matters. But what I'm asking you, what are you going to do with this lambda? That's what I'm asking. How is it related? That too, you're telling lambda of the some light absorbed. So the thing is, people. Okay, maybe I'll give you 10 more seconds if you can come up with something.
Sir, is it like related to the number of unpaired electrons? Like, if there's more number of unpaired electrons, this thing means then like
Okay.
radiation of light that will be absorbed will be of higher color, like it will be of higher wavelength, like red color or something will be absorbed.
I understand. Well, I understand what I'm trying to tell you, but we are deviating from the topic, whatever you told me. But I will tell you, I will let you know what is that. See, it doesn't matter whether I have one unpaired or two unpaired or three unpaired electrons, because what you have to understand is whatever be the amount of energy given to us, this would be quantized in the sense that there will be a lower energy level, there will be a higher energy level. If you give energy exactly equal to this delta E, that is, it will have some energy E1, it will have some energy E2. This is the packet of energy, right? So it doesn't matter if you give one packet of energy, one electron will go. Two packets of energy, two electrons. So it is pretty. What do you say? If this increases, this also increases. It's like that. I mean, in the sense that, but you cannot tell. But remember, we always talk about this energy in terms of kilojoule per mole. That means for 1 mole of electron, or say for 1 electron, how much of energy you're giving. That's how we speak. If you eventually increase the number of electrons, that will improve. Like what you have to understand is your everything is quantized. That's the term which you have to use here. So yes, what you're telling is correct, but what to say, not related to this. Yeah. Okay, so the thing is, it's all going to depend on the CFSE. The only energy term which you already studied in this chapter is CFSE, crystal field stabilizing energy.
Sir,
Right.
that is inversely proportional to the.
So CFSE, what do you see? If see what they're giving in generally, they will represent with the help of per centimeter. You have seen in one question also, right? So why this per centimeter is, you see energy, I can write it as Planck's equation, h nu, or say hc by lambda, right? So this 1 by lambda is something called as wave number. I think you know this. Right now, this wave number, I know obviously for lambda the unit will be centimeter or meter or something. So obviously for 1 by lambda wavelength, wave number, it will be per centimeter or per meter, right? So I can write this particular equation of energy as hc into the wavelength. So not wavelength, wave number. Okay, that is also a way which I'll be able to do this, write this equation. So what you have to understand is energy is directly proportional to the wave number, and energy is inversely proportional to the wavelength, or I can even say energy is directly proportional to the frequency, right? But if you ask me, sir, what is the relationship between frequency and wave number? If you can just do this part, easy thing, right? Say I know E is equal to in terms of frequency h nu, right? Compare this equation and this equation. E is equal to h nu. E is equal to hc into what is that? Wave number. So how can I do h and h? I can just compare. So I can write frequency is equal to c into the wave number. Or this is equal to frequency is equal to c by lambda. 1 by lambda is again going to be wave number. So either way, like what you have to understand is this: what is directly proportional, what is inversely proportional, right? So when I say centimeter, we are talking about the wave number, which is directly proportional to the energy. Okay, so fine. Now that we understood, so that's the thing. So whichever is going to have, so they're talking in terms of wavelength, right? So whichever, if I say CFSE is going to be inversely proportional to the lambda, right? If I want maximum wavelength, the CFSE value should be minimum. Okay, the CFSE value of whatever out of these four, whichever is going to have minimum value of CFSE, right? That's the answer. That's the answer to this question. Now tell me, what are all the factors which will affect the CFSE of a complex? One thing you already told me: strength of the ligand, denticity. I'll explain you how is it. Okay, fine. So strength of the ligand is one, denticity is one. I'll explain you that. Other than that, what else? There is one. I would say one more. Now I can think of. Other than that, yeah, only one more. Actually, there is two more. Yes, what are the factors which will affect the value of CFSE? Obviously, the electronic configuration. The obvious things you leave: electronic configuration is one thing. Obviously, depending on that only, I'll calculate the CFSE value. And you said strength of the ligand. Obviously, when I have higher, the strength of the ligand increases, the splitting value increases. The
So
difference between
oxidation.
yeah, oxidation state. Yes. So metals with higher oxidation state, charge on the central metal. That's what is oxidation state. Correct. Right. So that higher oxidation state means higher amount of CFSE value, in the sense that the splitting is going to be really larger. There is one more, actually two more. If I ask you, I have manganese 2+, palladium 2+, and platinum 2+ in a complex, same ligand, but this metal ions, which will have the highest CFSE?
So depending on the 3D or 4D or 5D series.
Correct. So all this belongs to the same group. This is 3D, 4D, this is 5D. So obviously Pt2+ will have the highest CFSE value. That is one thing. Okay. What about one more is there, and that is going to be in terms of tetrahedral, not tetrahedral complexes, in octahedral complexes only. So we have seen this, right? Say when I have D4, right? When I have D4, I can write it in two ways: T2G3 Eg1 or T2G4 and Eg0, right? So what you have to understand is we talked about which is more stable, which is more stable, the first one or second one. This one or this one? Or what would be your guess? Or at least with what will you decide this? That you tell. What is this question about? So I have told you that this is more stable. How? You calculate the CFSE, right? So it's crystal field stabilizing energy. So the thing is, I told you, like generally CFSE value will always be negative values, right? And I told you this. I don't know whether you take notes properly. The more and more negative the value of CFSE is, more and more is the stability, right? Or I would say generally magnitude is directly proportional to stability, but generally CFSE values will be negative, because that's how it happens, right? So anyways, so what I was telling, yeah. So if you just check, if I want the CFSE value to be more and more negative, right, I should be putting the electrons in the T2G orbitals, because that is only having a negative coefficient. Is it not? T2G orbitals are the one which is going to have negative coefficient. So more and more electrons you put there, more and more will be the negative. I mean, more and more negative will be the value of CFSE, and more will be the stability, right? So this is also a criteria. Okay, so if I compare to T2G3 and Eg1, T2G4, Eg0 is more stable because T2, in this case, T2G has more number of electrons, more than this. Same I can do with say a D5 configuration. If you go for T5, in that case, which is going to have more number of electrons in T2G, that is going to be the more, that complex is going to be more stable. Okay, so yes, so we have seen the entire one particular small topic itself we saw. So like which is going to have, so we're talking about CFAC with respect to lambda, right? So the maximum lambda means minimum CFSC. So whichever is going to have the minimum amount of CFSC, that is going to be the answer to this question, right? And we didn't speak about the denticity, right? So I have to speak about that. So guys, monodentate ligands, no problem, right? When you have didentate ligands, or say something, let me take the example. Okay, so I have a metal center, right? Say now I take ethylene diamine, En, we write it En, right? So you know how the structure is, right? Say it's gonna be NH2, CH2, CH2, all right, NH2, ethylene diamine. This will be the structure, correct? So what will happen? I'll have a lone pair donated here, lone pair donated here. Some other ligands are there, right? So what you see is, if I'm going to have a didentate or a polydentate ligand in general, right? What will you see is a cyclic structure like this. Obviously, other two things are there, or say what other four things are there if it's an octahedral complex, right? If you have a didentate or a polydentate ligand, these things will happen, right? The cyclic structure formation will happen. Okay, so this particular cyclic structure formation phenomena is what is called as chelation, right? So then this particular ligand which causes this ring structure are what are called as chelating ligands. Okay, right? So this chelation, if it happens, basically what is chelation? Chelation is when you have a polydentate ligand, they form a cyclic structure by binding from both or how many ever centers from which they can bind with the metal atom. They will use as much as possible to make a ring structure. Okay, right? So that formation, that phenomena is what is called as chelation, and whatever the ligand is responsible for doing this, those are what are called as chelating ligands. Okay, so what you have to understand is, people, chelation always brings in stability, right? If you have more and more number of chelating ligands, right, that will always bring in more stability. Okay, right? And there are entropic reasons for this. Like with the help of entropy, if you can check, you will see that entropically this formation of ring is more favorable. Okay, right? So what I was telling is, why did I start this? Yeah, because I have En here. So how, again, one more thing I have to understand is how stability, we know how stability and CFSC are related, and I know now how CFSC and what is that, lambda are related, right? Okay, so using all this, we just go for it. Tell me the answer. Which is going to have minimum value is the question. Maximum lambda means minimum energy, CFSC. Which is going to have.
Option is D.
Option is D. D.
Yeah,
D for dog.
Yes,
see, that is going to have the largest value among this. Why? I told you stability and your CFSC value are directly proportional. Isn't magnitude minus value, obviously magnitude wise CFSC and stability are directly proportional. Can I say you are telling that? Obviously you know now, understood that this is the one that is going to have maximum stability because of the same thing we're talking about, chelation, right? So that is going to have maximum CFSC. That means minimum wavelength that it has. Did you understand what I said?
Yes, sir. I got confused.
Right? Okay. So tell me, which one? See, in one question, you see how much things you're learning. Quick, what other guesses? Anybody wants to guess anything? We'll speak about that. Okay, tell me, what about the strength of the ligands present and CFSC value? How are they related? Directly proportional or inversely proportional?
Directly proportional.
Directly proportional. More and more the strength of the ligand, more and more will be the splitting, right? So tell me, so this is ruled out now. All the things have ammonia, which is a intermediately okay ligand, strong or weak, okay. Like we cannot decide it like that. Generally strong field ligand. Keep it. Okay, right. Now you have to look at what are the other types of ligands present. Right. So in this
Sir,
thing
so
you
it's
have
same.
6. Yeah, correct. A is the answer. Right. Okay. So in this case I have 6 NH3s. Right. And here I have 5 NH3s and 1 H2O. Again, H2O and NH3 have almost similar amount of strength. Right. So they almost have equal CFSs. Approximately again. Right. So now if you look at this, I have 5 CH3s and 1 Cl. Now Cl is a weak field ligand. Now strength of the ligand and the CFSE are inversely related. That means here I have a weak field ligand. So definitely I will have a lesser value of CFSE. So among these 4, this is the one which is having minimum CFSE because it has one weak field ligand, right? And obviously it is going to have the lambda to be maximum, the wavelength of absorption to be maximum. Okay, so I hope everybody understood what happened here. Right. So another type of question they're asking like this. I have D4 high spin octahedral complex, right? Calculated CF. Right, I have D4 D4 high spin octahedral complex. Find its CFSE value.
Sir, is it minus 0.6 delta naught?
Okay, I'll check. So D4, now they are given to be high spin. Now please understand, high spin means what? High spin means
More number of unpaired electrons.
more number of unpaired electrons. That will only have higher spin angular momentum. High spin means high spin angular momentum. That's what they're telling, right? So obviously the pairing should not happen. Only then I will have higher number of unpaired electrons, right? So if I have to write D4 high spin T2G and EG, it will be T2G3 EG1, right? So let us calculate now, right? So it will be CFSE is, I should write the formula right this time. So it will be 0.6 into number of electrons in EG minus 0.4 into number of electrons in T2G into delta naught. Delta naught value they'll give. They didn't give. If they give, you substitute the values here like this. They gave 18,000 centimeter, something like that. They give, they substitute. You substitute the value. Okay. So now we know what is it. So 0.6 into 3 and EG into 1. Oh, sorry. This is in this into 1. And number of electrons in T2G is 3. So it will be 0.6 minus 1.2. Right? Minus 0.6 minus 1.2 will become minus 0.6 delta naught. Yeah. I think this is what you said. Minus 0.6 delta naught.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Correct. Right. Okay. So like this, only questions will be asked from CFSE. And there is one more conceptual questions I saw. One very nice question. Where was it? Somewhere I saw. Here. Let let me see if you try to remember whatever you have learned in class. Nice application. So they're telling C triple bond O. Like say I have a CO, carbon monoxide. Here the bond length is 1.128 angstrom units. Okay. Now they're asking, I have FeCO5. Okay, FeCO5. Now they're asking, what is the bond length of CO in this molecule? I'm talking about CO bond length here, obviously. Right? Fine. So I'll give you options. Options I'll give you. I have A 1.15, 1.128, 1.72, 1.11. Angstrom units. All are angstrom units. Think about it. See, it's obviously you don't have any formula till now. Even I don't know any formulas for calculating bond length, unless and until they talk about dipole moment, right? That is charge into distance. Distance is the bond length there. Generally, we don't have such formulas for bond lengths. So it is something theoretical. Think.
Sir, is it something related with synergic bonding?
Yeah, resonance. Yes. I hope synergic bonding, you mean resonance, correct?
Yes. Is it that because of that pi star, this thing, something is involved?
Yes, correct.
Will be unstable, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just remember.
So
pi star.
what happens is, see, there are two ways of writing this structure. Oh, hope you understand. One way is like this: metal carbons I'm talking, right? Other way is when you have, say, extra electrons on the metal. I told you that this can be involving in resonance, something like this. So you can write it like this also. Okay. So what I trying to understand is, in C triple bond O, when only carbon monoxide is there, that triple bond is perfectly intact, very strong bond, right? But if once the moment the CO is attached to the metal, either in this way or say this way, either way, what you see is the strength of the CO bond decreases. The triple bond is not exactly a full triple bond. It has somewhere in between a triple bond and a double bond, right? That means what? The bond strength, CO bond strength, I'm talking about CO bond strength. CO bond strength decreases compared to when I have only CO. Only CO will have higher bond strength, and when the moment CO bonds with metal, its bond strength decreases, right? And we know how bond strength and bond length are related. How are they related? How are they related? Bond strength and bond length. How are they related?
Inverse.
Inverse. Yeah. So obviously, a strong bond will have its atom very close by, right? So stronger the bond, smaller the bond length, right? Okay. So what you have to understand is, now they have given the bond length of CO in only CO is 1.128. So the bond strength decreases. So the bond length has to increase in the metal carbonyl. FeCO5, whatever the things, right? So the CO bond length should have increased, and the only value which matches is C. All the other values are less or equal in C compared to 1.128. Okay. So the answer to this question is 1.72. I don't know what it might or might not be correct, but from the options, this is the best option I can choose. Obviously, not by inky pinky ponky, by applying concepts. right? Okay. So that's about, I think that's enough number of questions from coordination complexes. What is the time? Oh, I almost just 1 hour. Oh God. Do only a couple of problems anyways, but you learned a lot of stuff. Definitely a lot of questions will come from coordination complexes. At least 3-4 questions you can expect easily. Right. Okay. So we said we'll start with kinetics, right? So like I will not like teach you as such. We will do good problems, right? And like this, you can understand, right? You will learn a lot of stuff as I ask when I solve the problems. I ask you to do. If you're able to solve well and good. If not, I'll help you. And wherever the theory I feel you don't know, I'll be able to. I have this intuition. Don't worry, right? So at that time I'll teach you. Yeah. Okay. If you don't know, properly, fine. Okay. Right. But if I would have preferred a stylus, because otherwise I will dictate the questions. I'll try to arrange a stylus very soon. Maybe next class I will try to get it. Okay. We're doing kinetics, right? So in kinetics, was there anything which was deleted? You told me Arrhenius equation, temperature dependence. Other
Yes,
than
sir.
that, anything? Other than that, anything else was excluded? Did you have collision theory?
That was also
No, sir.
deleted.
Deleted, sir.
Great. Okay. Fine. 1, 2. Okay. So, well, let's start with a simple problem. Okay. They have given for this reaction the rate of formation of SO3, right? Yeah, rate of formation of SO3 is 100 kg per minute. Correct. Yeah, 100 kg per minute. They're asking what is the rate of disappearance of O2 and SO2 both defined. Okay, so they have given you the rate of formation of SO3 is something, and they're asking you what is the rate of disappearance of O2 and what is the rate of disappearance of SO2. Obviously, hope you remember. I mean, hope you know, right? So when I talk about rate, right, the overall rate of a reaction actually depends on the individual reactants and products, right? Say individual reactants and the products in the sense, what is the rate at which each and every reactant is consumed? That is what is called as rate of disappearance, right? And say, or in other words, rate can also be described, the overall rate I'm talking about, right? Or overall chemical reaction can be described in terms of the rate of formation of products also, right? So you must know how they are related. One thing is with respect to rate law, right? Rate law is like this. Rate law, if I have rate law is R is equal to some rate constant into the concentration in whatever the number of reactants with some powers you write. This is rate law, right? This way you will be able to connect rate directly with the concentrations, right? But what you have to know, this rate we're talking about is the overall rate of the reaction, right? Now this overall rate depends on the rate of formation of products, individual products, right? And it also depends on the rate of disappearances of the reactants, individual reactants. Okay, right. So you have to know from the equation, how can you predict it, right? So can you tell me what is the answer to this question? have you written tests on chemical kinetics in your school? Did you write?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And now you're taking so much time with this question.
There is a 200 kg
For
for the
O2
rate
or
of
SO2?
disappearance. Both,
O2. Okay. For SO2?
like both, sir. Both together is a 200 kg per minute.
Okay. Fine. Frankly speaking, I'm a little surprised.
Sir, it will
Okay.
be 100 for O2 and it will be minus half of 100 for SO2. No, sir.
Yeah. So, like, see, one thing what you have to know is if you have a reaction like some AA plus BB gives CC plus GD, right? Now, the overall rate R can be connected to individual ABCDs, individual reactants, individual products. Okay. Now, this rate, if I write in terms of A, it will be rate of disappearance of A. And how will I write it? Now, since my reactant concentration will be decreasing as the time progresses, I have to put a negative sign for the rate. Right. So it will be D minus 1 by A dA by dt. That's how I write it. Now, this dA by dt, this term is what is called as your rate of disappearance of A. And minus 1 by A into dA by dt. That is the overall rate. Hope you're trying to understand what I'm telling. Right? Well, dA by dt minus dA by dt, if you want to call it. Minus dA by dt is the rate of disappearance of A. But if I multiply it with the reciprocal of the stoichiometric coefficient, it becomes the overall. Same way, this overall rate can be equal to minus 1 by B into dB by dt. Again, what does this mean? What is this telling you? dB by dt without the coefficient is my rate of disappearance of D. And this minus 1 by B dB by dt is what is the overall rate. And this is how you can connect individual reactants' rates of disappearances. Not only that, you can compare with the product sides. So now again, you can write it like, now I put plus because I go to the product side because the concentration increases. So dC by dt. And okay, right here, plus, I mean, that's equal to plus 1 by D by dt. Again, dC by dt and dd by dt, all these are rate of formations of products, C and G. And if I multiply with the reciprocal of stoichiometric coefficient, 1 by C and 1 by D, they become equal to the overall rate of reaction. This you have to know, right? How a rate of overall reaction depends on the rate of formations and rate of disappearances. Second thing, obviously, in the related analysis, you have to know that they're related with the help of their stoichiometric coefficients, right? And how you can compare the in between the reactants and products itself. How can you compare that? You have to know, right? So now, how can I write this here? Now, for this reaction, how can I write it? I can write it as, like, forget about the signs. If you want, you can put. But for this question, they didn't ask me any sign. But so you don't have to worry about it, right? So I can write 1 by 2 into dSO2 divided by dt is equal to 1 by 1. The stoichiometric coefficient is 1. So it will be dO2 divided by dt is equal to 1 by 2 into dSO3 by dt. Right? What are they given? Rate of formation of SO3 is this much. So this value they give dSO3 by dt. This value, not 1 by 2 into that. Only dSO3 by dt. The rate of formation of SO3 is given. So that value is 100. Okay. Now what do you see from this? So now I want rate of disappearance of O2. Rate of disappearance of O2 is this. Right? Okay. So rate of disappearance of O2 is this. So that is equal to 1 by 2 into rate of the disappearance of SO3. That's what my equation says. Right? So 1 by 2 into this thing will become, this value will become 50. Okay. Right. Now I want what is the rate of disappearance of SO2. Right? Now that you can see, it will be one. So now this and this will be connected. right? Okay, so the 1 by 2 into dSO2 by dt is equal to 1 by 2 into SO3 by dt. So that means that and this and that are equal, right? So again, you can say for this it will be 100. Okay, right? Fine, maybe we'll do one more like this. Okay, so I have x a plus yb gives zc, and they have given this also, minus dA by dt is equal to minus dB by dt, which is equal to 1.5 into dC by dt. Okay, so these two are given in the question, right? And they're asking you what are the x, y, z values. Basically, they're asking you what is the stoichiometric coefficient of ABC, A, B, and C. Go for it.
Sir, it's 2, 2, and 3 is there.
Yes, sir.
2 to 2 to 3.
3.
Okay. Fine. So this you can easily do. I think now 3.5. Remember that I can write it as 3 by 2. Correct? Right? So now if I compare this and this, now how will it do? How it would have been? It would have been basically minus 1 by 3 here. Same way, if I compare this and this, again, this would have been minus 1 by 3 here. Only then this can be equal to 3 by 2 of that. Again, this can be equal to 3 by 2 of that. Means obviously the coefficient should have been here 1 by 3. I mean, the stoichiometric coefficient will be 3, reciprocal will be 1 by 3. Right? So it will be 3, 3, and 2. X, Y, Z values would be 3, 3, and 2. Okay. Right? Okay, just one last question in this model, or let me make my own question. It should be fun. Right. Say I take N2 plus 3H2 gives 2NH3. Right. So I'm giving you the say dN2 divided by, or I would say in words I'll tell, rate of disappearance of N2 is some 10 mole per minute, or say 10 mole per hour, whatever it is. Okay, right? For find it for H2 and NH3 and the overall rate, right? Find R H2 and R of NH3. Obviously, R of H2 in the sense rate of disappearance of H2. Same way, I'm asking you to find rate of appearance of or rate of formation of ammonia and the overall rate, everything.
Sir, so rate of disappearance of H2 will be 3.33, and then rate of appearance of NH3 will be 5.
3.33 for H2. Are you sure?
Oh, sorry, with 30, sorry.
Correct.
That, sorry. And then 20 for that
Yeah.
appearance.
Yeah, correct. Right. So how can I write, guys? So I can write it as overall rate is equal to rate of N2, because there is no stoichiometric coefficient, rate of disappearance of N2. Or I can write it as 1 by 3 into rate of H2, which is equal to 1 by 2 into rate of NH2. Right? So what is given to us? This is given to us, that is 10. Right? So R of H2 will be 3 into this. So this should be 30, this should be 20, and this should be 10. That's it. Okay, so this value is already given. I just mark it. So from that, you'll be able to find it. Right? Okay, so that is one thing. Okay. I have a reaction like this is K1, K2, and this is B, right? They have given one table, concentration of B and rate, that is one table. So in this table, they have given 0.01 m, 2 into 10 to the power minus 2, and 0.02 m, 4 into 10 to the power minus 2, rate, mole per liter per second, m, capital M per second. And they are giving you one more data. One more data is when I plot rate versus concentration of A, right? I am getting a graph like this, right? So I'm asking you, write the rate law equation, overall rate, in terms of K1, in terms of concentration of A, you know what is rate law, right? R is equal to some K1 into something, some K1 into A or B or into the power X. That representation is what is called as rate law. Right. Now, we'll come back to the data first place. Okay, that will come back later. Right. Now, if this kind of reactions we know are what are reversible reactions. Correct. Now, when the reaction starts, when a reversible reaction starts, now A will form B. Assuming that A will form B first. Okay. So now the reaction will happen. A will start forming B. Now, if I have enough amount of B, B will also start forming A. So both sides these reactions will happen. A giving B, B giving A will simultaneously happen, but different rates. That's what I need to understand. That's what is given here also. K1, K2. If I have rate constants to be different, obviously rate will also be different. Right? So remember, rate depends on two things. One is the rate constant, the other one is the concentration. So three things. The third one is the order of the reaction. Anyways, we'll come back to that. So what you have to understand is this forward reaction and backward reaction are not happening in the same rate. Now it will become same. It will become same at. It will become same at the rate of forward reaction, the rate of the backward reaction will become same at. Okay, it will become same at equilibrium. Right? Until equilibrium is reached, either forward reaction is faster or the backward reaction is faster. That we don't know. That will depend on which one is higher. If K1 is higher, forward reaction will dominate. If K2 is higher, backward reaction will dominate. Simultaneously, it will happen. Right? Okay. So if I have to write the overall rate of this reaction, right? If I have to write the overall rate of this reaction, how can I write? Now you see, you have seen only reactions where A giving B, only one side the reaction goes. You know how to write it with respect to the rate of formation of products and the rate of rate of disappearance of reactant. That we learned, right? When I have a reversible reaction, what you're seeing is two reactions are happening at the opposite side. It's like force. A force is a vector quantity. Like that, rate is also a vector quantity. Say, for example, say I am holding this pen with two hands. Say this side I give 10 newtons, this side I give 5 newtons. What is the net force and which direction it will move? Say what, or I'll put like this. Say I have a particle, this side 10 Newton, this side 5 Newton. What is the net force and which direction the object will move?
5 Newton in the positive x direction.
Right. So 5 Newton is the net force and it will be acting towards this side. Normal vector, like, or if it's a three lines, you know, you can use parallelogram law or you can use triangular law to resolve it. Anyways, right. So the same thing will be applied here, right? So the overall rate is RF minus RB. The rate at which the forward reaction happens minus the rate at which, how do you do it? 10 minus 5, you got 5. Same way only you do that. Okay. Now, what happens at equilibrium? At equilibrium, what happens? There is nothing happening basically, right? Nothing is changing. A is not changing to B or B is not changing to A. Whatever it is, there is the net rate is 0. There is nothing happening. So at that time, what will happen? Obviously, if you put R is equal to 0, at equilibrium, you will get RF minus RB. Sorry, RF is equal to RB. Okay, right? So now this is how you calculate the overall rate if it is not at equilibrium. If it is at equilibrium, RF is equal to RB. Right? Now, how will you write the rate of the forward reaction in terms of rate law? Now, at least can you do it? Now, this I told you. Now, forget about the rate. I will come to this. We'll talk about this. How will you write the rate? In terms of K1, concentration of A, concentration of B, whatever it is, how will you write it? Overall rate is equal to?
Sir, is it K1 into concentration of A power 0 minus K2
We don't
into
okay, correct.
concentration of
Correct.
B power 1?
B, concentration of B. Right. Oh, you're telling the concentration of A power 0, B power?
1.
Okay. So you're telling the answer, final answer. Yeah, correct. All you're telling is correct. Okay, fine. So what I can write is RF, the forward reaction. Now we know how to write the rate law. Rate of any reaction, for example, A giving B is a reaction. I'll write R is equal to some K into the concentration of A. This is what is rate law. Law of mass action. Remember, law of mass action says that the rate of a reaction is directly proportional to the concentration or active masses of the reactants raised to some powers of the stoichiometric. Generally, it is stoichiometric coefficient, but every time it need not be that. Okay. So, anyways, so that's how we write. So for RF, A is the reactant. So I can write it as the rate constant is K1 into the concentration of A minus RB. If I write RB, for RB, the reactant is B. So minus, it will be the rate constant is K2. So it will be K2 into the concentration of B. And obviously, the power should come. It should be X and Y. I don't know what is the order. That I cannot decide. Right. So like this way, I'll be able to write the overall rate of this reaction. Right. Forward reaction minus the backward reaction. Right. Okay. So now this is done. The only thing which we don't know here is X and Y. Right. That is basically the order with respect to A and the order with respect to B. Both the things you have to find and substitute there, and those are the choices given to us. And for finding those orders only, this data are given to us. This graph and this table, everything is given to us. Okay, right. So now let me concentrate on the graph first. Okay. Now from the graph, what are you observing? Tell me. It is a graph between rate and A, concentration of A. What are you observing?
So rate is independent of the concentration.
Absolutely right. So even though you see the concentration is varying from this side to this side, there is only one rate. Right. So obviously, what you can know about this? The only possibility if this can happen is when, obviously, I know that it is going to be some power x. Right. So only if this x is 0, right? Obviously, it is going to be independent of this. Or I can just write R is equal to K into A power 0 will just become R is equal to K. R is equal to some constant. It doesn't depend on the concentration of that particular reactant. Right? So what you have to understand is, in this case, X is 0. right? The order of the reaction with respect to A is 0 because rate is independent of A. If you would have found the graph was given like this, same graph, R versus A graph, then what is the order?
1.
1. Why? It's like this. I have R is equal to some K into A. This is like Y is equal to MX. Right? R is equal to K A power 1. So it will become Y is equal to MX. So that's how the graph looks. Say if I give you graph something like this, then what will be the rate? Okay, maybe my diagram is bad, but still, what will be a guess?
K into concentration of A plus
Sorry.
K into concentration of A power 2.
Yeah, the order will be 2. So I would what to say? I assumed that you will know that it's a parabola. If not, if you didn't understand it's a parabola, my bad. But still, that's a parabola. So that's like Y is equal to X squared, AX squared kind of equation. So that will be order number 2, right? So just by looking at the graph, so this is how orders are also calculated. This is how orders are calculated. There are no theoretical ways by which actually you'll be able to calculate order, right? One way of doing it is by going for plotting a graph between the rate and the concentration, whichever reactant concentration you want to check, that you check, right? So if you find any of these type of graph, then you can say, okay, if I'm going to get a line like this, that means the order is 0. If like this means 1, like this means 2. Okay, that is how experimentally they'll be doing it. Okay, from the graph only they'll calculate the order of the reaction. Okay, right. So now we have understood one thing: X is equal to 0. Right. Okay. Now when I go for this, that's why the table is given to us. Now, whenever this kind of tables are given, right? Whenever these kind of tables are given, now please understand there is one. Remember like this: R1. So obviously, the rate of the reaction is going to be dependent on what is the concentration of the reactant. Right? Say I have two cases. One, I start with 1m concentration. I start with 2m concentration. Obviously, wherever I have higher concentration, there the rate will be higher. Right. So, anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is I would say R is equal to some K2 into B power X. I don't know what is this X. Right. Now I'll start with first concentration. R1 at D1 concentration. R2 rate constant the same. For whatever the type of the whatever be the value of the initial concentration or the whatever the concentration, rate constant is same. That's why it's a constant, right? R2 will be K2 into B2 power X, right? Now what you do? You divide both these equations. Whenever you have data given like this, okay, two rates, two different concentrations. So K2 will get cancelled. So I'll get R1 by R2 is equal to B1 by B2 the whole power X, right? So now the concentration values will be given to you. R1 and R2 values will be given to you from the table. The only thing you have to find from this would be X, and that is the order with respect to B, or in this case we used Y. Okay, we use Y. Okay, so now you can just put in the values easily. So if I do that, it will become 0.02 divided by 0.01, or say 0.01 divided by 0.02, whatever you want you can do, is equal to 4 into 10 to the power minus 2 divided by 2 into 10 to the power minus 2, the whole power X. So 10 to the power minus 2 cancels, this and this will become 2. So basically, what you're finding here is 2 is equal to, this is 2 times, not 4 times, okay? 2 power X. 2 is equal to 2 power X. So what should have been the value of X so that this will be equal? Obviously, if I have X to the power 1 is what is 2. So X should be 1. So if I write the proper rate law, R is equal to K1 into A power 0, because the order is 0 with respect to A, because of the graph we found out. And for B, we just now found out the thing is 1. So it will be K2 into B power 1. This is what is the rate law of this particular equation. Okay, right? So again, we saw how to calculate rate from the graph, right? And basically there are three methods of doing it. Graphical method from whatever we did, right? Second thing is from the table, this kind of questions, or that is the concentration, right? Third thing is by using t-halves, right? Looking at the half-lives, I will be able to decide what will be the order of the reaction. So if you want, I can tell you how that works now itself before we even do any problem. Remember this t-half. Remember, obviously, the half-life period again will depend on what is the initial concentration you start with. Is it not? Obviously, if you're going to start with very high amount of molecules, very high amount of that becoming 50% would take a larger amount of time than when I use a very smaller quantity. Smaller quantity will become its half in a little lesser time, right? Okay, so this t-half 1 divided by 2 second attempts t-half, different concentration, different initial concentration, is equal to r naught of 1, or say fine, r naught of 1 by r naught of 2, the whole power 1 minus n, where n is the order of the reaction. Okay, right? T-half 1 is by t-half 2 is equal to r naught 1 by r naught 2, the whole power 1 minus n, where n is the order of the reaction. I can prove it to you. There is a proof from which I'll be able to get this, right? But if you're interested, maybe sometime later we'll see. It is a very big derivation, right? It'll take, I have to clean the board at least 2 times if I have to do it. So anyways, now you can directly take it down. Very useful one. Okay. T-half 1 by t-half 2 is equal to r naught 1 by r naught 2, the whole power 1 minus n. That is the way you would find with the help of t-halves. Now this you saw with the help of concentrations, right? What is the time? Fine. So maybe we'll stop with this. Okay. So next class we'll continue with the problems and we'll do more of rate law, like first order questions, 0th order questions. So second order is also there for you. Second order I'll introduce. But again, questions coming from the rare, but still we'll introduce it to you. Not a big deal. And we'll see different kinds of graphical questions. Lot of graphical questions come from this chapter. Okay, this one, thermodynamics, gaseous state. All these are the chapters from which you can get graphical questions. Right? Okay, fine. Thank you guys. We'll meet again if you don't have any questions. Is there anything? Okay, fine. Thank you. We'll meet tomorrow. We have class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.